Baker and that other guy.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, or if you're listening at the podcast replay, which comes out on Thursdays, by the way, thank you so much for tuning in as well. In the meantime, please like, follow, and subscribe this show. Again, whether you're live here on YouTube, Facebook, or tuning in on your favorite podcast player, that's Spotify, iHeartRadio, pretty much all of them. Please go ahead and follow us there. Give us a review as well. We love it. We love it. We love it. And share this podcast with your friends, any kind of USA Rugby fans, or any rugby fans in general. It doesn't have to be just USA fans. But check it out. Share the show with them. In the meantime, my co-host, John Fitzpatrick, unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. I scoured the internet looking for a temporary co-host, but I just couldn't find anyone worthy. So you're stuck with just me tonight. It's okay. It's just an hour-long show. You'll be okay. Actually, I did hear that Fitzy was out in Seattle auditioning to become the new rookie mascot performer for the Seattle Seawolves. So we'll see. Everyone wish him luck for that one. Tonight, if you're not already familiar with the show, tonight we have two great guests tonight. USA Men's head coach Scott Lawrence and USA Women's head coach Sione Fukofuka joining us later in the show. And we got Scott coming up here in just in a minute, right after I take care of some information. Some stuff out there you guys might have caught. Antoine Dupont, arguably the number one player in the world right now, is not playing for LA, so relax. He was just in LA doing some rugby business, other business. I know there's a photo online of him with a rugby LA shirt. Calm down, maybe one day, but not yet. Also, a negative side, the Utah Warriors just announced today that they are not renewing 17 contracts, and in those 17 contracts are a few Eagles: Paul Mullen, Mika Kruse, Tommy Tuivau. I mean, those are three solid players who apparently do not have a home in MLR right now. My wish is Paul Mullen becomes a free jack. He has family in Massachusetts, so that's just my wish right there. But interesting stuff going on in Utah. They've been a great program since they came into the league, and they still are a great program, so obviously they have a plan, and we will stay tuned and check that out. So, again, just real quick, go ahead, please like, follow, and subscribe. If you're watching right now live on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All this is just, we do this for fun. We love the game, and we love that you're listening in to enjoy the game with us as well. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Fresh back from the PNC in Japan, joining us now is US Rugby men's head coach Scott Lawrence. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, it's good to be home.
Yeah, do you get any downtime at all?
I think I got 3 or 4 hours in the morning that I got home, and, just to catch up on some things that Mrs. Lawrence had for me to do when I got home, and then straight back into it.
And right back into the heat of Atlanta when you got back. I was down there shortly before you got back. It was like 90, I think, when I left there. I know Japan was warm too, but Atlanta was hot.
Yeah, I think it was the first time in my life that I actually looked forward to lower humidity in Atlanta.
Jesus.
Before. Yeah.
So. Yeah, that's something a few of us noticed. The uniforms the players were using, it looked like they were soaked before kickoff. That's how bad it looked.
Yeah, it was pretty humid. Sun was pretty intense there, and you could see why the Japanese walk around a lot with umbrellas and covered up. Sun's pretty intense there.
I bet. All right, Scott, let's jump right into it. Let's talk the PNC, Pacific Nations Cup. Canada, Japan, Fiji, Samoa, and USA, obviously 1-3 finish with the lone win over Canada. Talk about the overall performance of the team and a disappointing tournament as well.
I think when we look at in retrospect, it was a good start. We were kind of fresh coming in, and you look at the performance of the team. International rugby is interesting because we play on a Saturday in LA. By the time you land, it's Monday in Japan. So you're, 14-hour time change and a 6-day turnaround to go play a new test match in a different country. So that first week, I think we came out a bit slow to start against Japan, gave them a little too much time and respect, so to speak. And then really clawed our way back in the second half. I think from Fiji perspective, the team grew physically quite a bit, and physicality really came up. Discipline really came up in that game. Same story for Fiji and Samoa. Really, just really opportune moments in the game that we just didn't execute well, and it's a real reflection of where we are with the low number of caps in the squad, and learning how to win and lose those games when it counts.
And yeah, and so let's talk a bit about the positive takeaways of this tournament. It seemed like you mentioned a minute ago when discipline is good, the team played really well. I noticed that against Fiji and Samoa. When discipline was there, the ball was quicker. The team played much better together. Talk about those positive takeaways from the tournament. What did the team do well, and also what did they improve the most in maybe over that period?
Yeah, I think discipline. We had three main focuses for the overarching principles or focuses for the campaign, which was discipline, physicality, and American bravery. So those three things are really what we focused on. Discipline down to coding our trainings for penalties and doing penalty reviews and law presentations, and so an immense amount of time. So our discipline went up, significantly, and we saw a lower number of obvious penalties in the games. More 50-50s. So I think that was a plus, and something I'll continue to work with the referees on is we want our 50% of those 50-50s when it comes to those. So we did see that quite a bit. I think physicality wise, we spent a lot of time on contact accuracy. Generally, the players coming in from the professional league, the breakdown's a bit of a mess here, and guys get away with a lot of things. So one thing that we picked up coming out of the July series was that things that we were being penalized for in test matches were being allowed inside of Major League Rugby, guys putting their hands on the floor and things like that. So we spent an immense amount of time just, kind of working on those things and getting our body height down, getting our leg drive in the right spot in order to win collision. So tons of work on that, a lot of technical work, mindset work as well. So, if you start to look at our dominant shot percentages, they went up as we went throughout the tournament. So the physicality came up, and we saw some real gain line carries, and our attacking penalties were right in line with everybody else, which we still think we can improve. So I think, we did some things in attack. We tried some things, and that's what you do in a year like this. You try some things when you're not, trying to qualify. And some things worked, some things didn't. And, I'll say there were opportunities where we pulled the trigger in some of those games, and that's a positive, and the things that we were trying. But I think there's still a long way to go with sharpening up the attack from this tour.
And you did mention MLR. It is a bit messy, and it's getting there. It's growing, obviously.
Yeah.
How do you build those consistent skills in the execution? How do you get them from entering from the side? How do you get them with hands on the ground? Is it playing more together, training more together at the international level, more test matches? I mean, you're going to have 9 international fixtures by the end of this year. That's got to help.
Yeah, time together is always key. They need to perform under pressure. How do you become a better coach? You get better players. How do you become a better player? You play with better players and against better players as well. So I think time together is obviously key. The international game, our teams can generally do something 70 to 80% of the time. They can execute under pressure, something really good. So if you're an 80% execution team, you're actually pretty good. If you're 90% or above, you're world class. So the game is quite simple, but it's unforgiving. So that one time that you are late for a clean, or that one time you don't work on the floor after you carry, it's a turnover because you're facing guys that are in that 90% or above category. So I think the key thing here, is, that time together that forces that discipline, because there is no compromise. It's a loss of ball, it's a penalty, it's a change in momentum in the game. So if work focuses on those higher execution rates, and then, when they leave campus, just making sure that we share information with players. There's real clear development plans and one-on-ones aligned with coaches, and that we're transparent and share data to the coaches that are coaching the players every day, and foster a really kind of collaborative relationship around that.
So we had Greg Peterson joined us a few weeks ago when he was with you over in Japan, and we talked about wins and losses, and he's obviously expressed that it's frustrating not winning these matches, and he's obviously been around a while, and you got the newer guys in there as well. Is that an overall feeling amongst, say, the coaching staff like yourself or else? Obviously you're trying to build for the future, but not winning matches has got to be frustrating.
Yeah, I think it can be tough. I mean, when you lose matches consecutively, my mother used to say to me, if you look for problems, you'll find plenty of them. And it's, you kind of get that sentiment within camp at times, this is broken, that's broken, etc. So yeah, it's on us as a coaching staff to continue to say, this is where we got better, this is where we need to improve, stay neutral, so to speak, solution focused, and keep working on it. I think, in this tour, we were getting better each game. Through Fiji, we did get better between Fiji and Samoa, but we really felt like the Samoa game was a game that was there for the taking, that we thought we could have won. And so probably the feeling of disappointment was greater in that last one. You end up finishing the tournament 1-3 instead of 2-2, fourth place instead of third. So we've kind of that sentiment is certainly there. It doesn't feel good, but that's the best thing about sport. You got another chance here in November, turn it around.
Very true. Let's talk about some players really quick from the PNC. Can you share anything about AJ McGinty and David Anu'u's status not being available? Was it because of club commitments? And also, are they available for the autumn test?
It's not because of club commitments. The clubs are, obligated through Regulation 9 to release the players during those windows. David had an opportunity to start and get starting time there in Toulouse. So it was a long-term conversation around David in terms of getting him available for next year and building depth in the front row. So it opened the door for Pono Davis, who I wanted to get into camp and have a look at. So we've got an agreement through this year. David will stay with the club, and Pono will be in the squad. AJ McGinty just had a new baby and was working through that right before tour. So again, we said, hey, let's take a break for the PNC, 5 weeks away. Wife with 3 young children. So AJ will come back into the fold here for November.
Speaking of AJ, how was he after the summer series? I know probably no one's more frustrated than he was as far as working off the tee, and he was a bit rusty coming into the fray. How was he after those matches?
I think he was pretty reflective on his performance, and AJ takes an immense amount of the team on his shoulders, and it's important for us that we put AJ in a position where he can just come in and do his job, not feel like he needs to lead the team or the attack, but come in and execute his role. And so I think we worked our way through that in the post review in July, and that's the way we're setting up going into November.
So you mentioned Pono a second ago. Let's talk about some of the guys who received their first caps in this tour. Again, Pono, McNulty, Santos, name a few. It seems to us, at least fans or viewing the matches, they all performed very well for their first taste of Test rugby. Toby Fricker played very strong, a couple of tries right off the bat, played really well at fullback. Talk about these new caps and how important it is to get them in now.
Yeah, it's important for them to get the Test experience, which we talked about earlier. It's also for team cohesion and for them to get in and start to build into next year. We'll go through November and then we'll have a big break. Again, we're not back together again until next July. So it is important that we get the time in, not just the time to be in camp now and to build the cohesion and do those things, but also to for them to understand the expectations, for them to know that when they do go back, we call it Eagle 365, that you need to be an international 365 days a year, which means being very professional within your club and living those ideals. So it's important for us to get exposure of a lot of players, and I'll expose some more players to it in November because for me it's about a development process between now and July for a pool of players upwards of 60 that we all want executing to the same development.
Big gap between the PNC and the autumn series. How are the current rostered players, or at least the players who've you already selected to I'm assuming you already selected to play in the November series, how are they keeping rugby fit physically and mentally? And also, those players who did not get selected now, how are they staying rugby fit this time of year?
So we have programming that comes from Alex Ross, our head of performance. So everybody's got an individualized program. There's a public dashboard, so accountability is maintained within the squad in terms of how we're doing that. And we encourage guys to get games. At least get 2 games between now and November, depending on what they can. And you see guys like Tavita Lepetti's playing, up at Mystic River, for example, right? And so we've got a number of players kind of floating around the ARP clubs, playing in the Chicago area, getting some games in Southern California. So they train in with clubs. And they pick at a couple games in between. But you saw it with AJ in July, and it is real. If you're not playing, your game instincts and the sharpness of your decision making it does deteriorate. So there's a lot of discussion, particularly with college coaches, about players playing. And they need to play. They need to create those mental maps, and they need to keep that mental acuity.
So, Scott, let's talk pathway systems and player growth. You recently shared, I believe today or yesterday, a post talking about how your staff prepares players for international matches and used the metric MMM, meaningful match minutes. Can you elaborate on that for our listeners?
Yeah, it's a competitive game, really, and that definition can be fairly loose. But number of minutes that you're playing in a game that is highly competitive for your level of play, that you're put in win and lose situations, and forced to make decisions and perform under pressure in that. So, I really like the Chicago Hounds model around MMM. They look at their academy and they look at the level of play that's required. So, your MMM may be at one level, and then the next year it's MLR level is considered MMM. So there's a progression to it. When we looked at our games, I just chose 2 examples of how we were able to progress Rand Santos and Dom Bisag into the national team this year. If they had just played their collegiate season, they had 4 to 5 meaningful matches, so to speak, that were close. They weren't complete blowouts. They, were pressure. The U20s campaign and the Junior World Trophy and then making it to a final drove those meaningful minutes. Those are high pressure minutes up to prepare them to international play. So I think I think the big thing around those minutes is you need those consistently year on year, and as part of our big play here through this next World Cup cycle is my biggest focus now is what are they going to do from 20 to 23, and where do those meaningful match minutes come? And so that's some of the programming and collaborative stuff we'll be doing with different programs around that.
Now, is there a certain weight put on these minutes? Let's say like Don Bisag, maybe 16 minutes or so against Canada, as opposed to playing for St. Mary against Life Wesley, although he played 80 in that game. That was a very competitive match. Is there a different weight for those two matches, especially because of different levels?
As Don progresses, there's a different weight, but we don't fine cut it that much, really. It's like, hey, was he in a tough game? Was he competitive? Was he at the level he should be for that particular competition? Yes, he was. Does he get 50% or not?
Yeah.
We don't really go down to that level.
So similar with, say, guys like Corbin Smith or Steph Crimp who play over in the Bucks Super Series in England. Decent league for them, University League. It's strong matches as long as they're very competitive. There's no 60-0 wins or losses. It's very competitive matches. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you're thinking about an international player, whether the game is playing in Super Bucks or it's playing in a collegiate game, you're going to want the ball in Don Bisag's hands when the score is within a try. Right, so he's gonna get an opportunity in a pressure situation to perform, and he's gonna learn from that.
And with the pathway systems, generally speaking, since you took over as the interim head coach, and to now, have you seen a measurable growth in the Pathways program?
Yeah, it's been intentional, in terms of what we do. So. I think I'm not sure if it's well known, but I didn't ask to come in to be the head coach. I asked to come in and run the entire pathway and head coach the national team. And so we've hired and aligned those pathway programs up to the senior team, same terminology, same expectations, player profiles, all the way up vertically. So a lot of matrix where, one coach from the U20s will be a skills coach, work with the national team, et cetera. So we've seen growth there. And what we really noticed was around Rand and Dom was we brought in new players into the squad in August that had not been in international play before. And we brought them in to the Eagles camp as well. And they were ahead of their professional peers in being able to prepare to train and prepare to play, and their professionalism, because they came through the pathway program and they understood what it was. The U20s is a replica environment of the senior Eagles in terms of the way things are done. And
part of the growth or pathways, I could be wrong about calling this a pathways program, but Charlotte Anthem, after one season with them, we talked about this early before the season, also even at the game. Were those goals set? You put goals on for the season for this team. Were they set? Were they set? Were they accomplished at the end of the season? You like I said, you put certain goals to this team, perform, get certain players. Yeah. Did you accomplish those goals?
Yeah, we did. We wanted to get 10 players to become full-time professionals for next year out of the Anthem program last year. And we've done that. We've been able to push a number of those players through. We wanted a couple new guys for the Eagle Pool. We got that with Connor McManus and Lucas Gramlich that came out of that. So those are expectations were met. We met those measurables. The rest of the program was about just getting started, just get off the ground and just get it going and build some pros for next year. And Brandon Sparks has done a really nice job, has had a good off season, and we'll have more pathway players in there for this next year.
Well, not just Pathways, but we see Connor Mooneyham has joined Anthem. Junior Gaffa is now a full-time member at Anthem. Should we expect to see more Eagles joining for this next season? Or maybe some Dallas players?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay. This is just mainly for me, and not just for me, but I guess for fans of USA as well. Have we seen the last, or at least less growth of domestic Eagles going overseas to play club rugby, maybe because of Major League Rugby or wanting to be available full time? Not that it's been a problem for AJ or David, but wanting to be available to be an Eagle at all times?
I'm not sure if that's really, causation. I think we definitely want to see, we want the players playing in Major League Rugby. It's our home competition, and we have good relationships there. And generally, most teams are pulling for, national team success. So that's important that we do that. When you step back from it, from a player perspective, you also say, if you can get a contract in the Prem or in top 14 because of your time in Major League Rugby, and until Major League Rugby is on par with those, then absolutely you should. You have a limited window to make a living at this, and so you should do that if and when that works for you. So, but I don't think we've seen guys that are necessarily not going. I think the PNC timing this year definitely put pressure on the guys that were there in those clubs. We never had that. It's not a problem. It's a good problem, but we never had that conflict, so to speak, in the past. But we'll continue to see guys that are doing things like taking the MLR off season and going and playing in the NPC, or going down and playing shoot shield. So there are players that are doing that, that are going abroad and doing that, and we encourage that as well.
All right, last thing, Scott, you've been at the helm of the program for about 2 years now. Your process or ideas of building the pathways, the program, the player pool, et cetera. We heard the terminology of 0Gs, Gemini, MMM, et cetera. It doesn't sound like something you just came up with when you got the job. Have you had these ideas in your back pocket for years, waiting for this moment, or is this something maybe you and the staff just came up with as soon as you took the job?
I had spent 20 years in business strategy and product strategy, so it's kind of it was a natural thing for me to put it together. It was a way for us to simplify ideas. I think we had an idea in the first 3 to 4 months of where we wanted to go. The more that we learned about where the bodies are buried, so to speak, where the financing is, where it's not, how it works with our partners and stakeholders, it really started to crystallize into, okay, here's the big rocks of this is how we need to move, and this is the cycle that we need to go through. We did a lot of that, and then we just put the moonshot framework around it because it made it tangible and made it something we could latch on to.
Well, Scott, thanks so much for coming on tonight. Good luck in November and good luck in the future. Obviously, we love talking to you about this stuff, so we'd love to talk to you again soon, maybe right around that time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and we'll catch up after November.
Sounds good, Scott. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
All right, for those just tuning in now, that was Scott Lawrence, the USA Men's Rugby head coach. And I'm not going to waste any time because our next guest has been waiting in the happy hour green room, eating up all the snacks and the drinks we left for him. Hopefully no alcoholic beverages because we have a lot to talk about. Let's bring him back. Let's bring him on again. Coming back on the show, I believe his third time, is USA Women's head coach, Sione Fukofuka. Sione, how are you? Unfortunately, I can't hear you. Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Yes. I always get scared there when we bring someone in the middle of the show. It's like, I hope we can hear them. How are you?
Good. Very good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. So about 9 months, give or take, since you've taken over the program. You seem to have all your hair still. That's a good thing.
Still got my hair. A lot more white has come through. But no, it's been great. Really enjoyed the challenge. And obviously here in Vancouver, we're up against the best teams in the world, which is exciting. A lot of growth in the group and clearly the World Cup on the horizon. So we're taking a lot of learnings out of each game that we've got here.
Absolutely. All right, Sione, have you ever been to British Columbia, up that part of Canada?
No, not that part. I was in Ottawa last year, but first time there.
Beautiful, beautiful location.
Yeah.
You get there sometime. Much more beautiful when you win matches, but we'll get to that in a second here. So let's jump into it, Sione. WXV1, you're up there in British Columbia, like I just mentioned. England, France, New Zealand, Ireland, and Canada's in there as well, but you're not facing them right off. First of all, let's just back up a second with the WXV1. Let's talk about how big or how important it was for the Eagles to qualify for the WXV1.
I think from a playing perspective and the players within the squad, it was massive. It gave them a lot of belief that they could. Clearly, the result against Australia was well earned, and we had to go deep to win it. But what was exciting is the response of the playing group and obviously that trust in us as a coaching staff, but also the belief that we can take steps forward. It qualified us for a World Cup, so it gave a lot of clarity in terms of what the next 12 months look like and how we can navigate through that. But more importantly, as I said just before, it gives us an opportunity to test ourselves against the best teams in the world. So obviously England, world number one last week. We've got France, world number 3. I was at 4 this week. So it's we're really enjoying being involved in the top tier, and we want to keep developing and improving so we stay there.
So unfortunate 61-21 loss to England. I don't think the score reflects how well the team played, except for near the end of the match. But generally speaking, talk about the team's performance and talk about how you prepared for England. What was the game plan? It looked like a very physical game plan and speed as well. Yeah,
so we were lucky to have probably our biggest lead in to a test match. We had 2 weeks, a week in Bellingham, which we were at Chuckanut Rugby Club, and that was excellent. We had a lot of time there to put a lot of learning in place and some and obviously a lot of physical work that went into preparing a test match team. From a tactical point of view, there were some key areas that we wanted to compete in, and obviously physicality in international rugby, full stop, men or women, is at the forefront, and we knew England are a very physical team, so we needed to compete there. It's also an area that we want to push in towards our team DNA. We want to compete physically and bring back, I suppose, that I suppose mantra of the past, where the US teams were well known for being physical, skillful teams, and we're building towards that. We were able to obviously compete for about 70 minutes in at that higher level, and obviously disappointed with the last 10 minutes because it's one of those cliches sometimes that the scoreline doesn't reflect the game. In this instance, it didn't. We were at 21-33. We were in the game and we were competing. Unfortunately, we didn't then close out the game. But at the same time, obviously, England are exactly what they are, world number one, and they showed that class to create 4 opportunities at the end and take them. So, the speed itself, like, we're working to get better at that. It's an area that we would like to keep improving. Obviously, with the injection of a few sevens players, we've been able to add a bit of strike to the outside channel. But what was probably more pleasing for us is that we scored 3 tries in 3 different ways. Lev, brilliant individual try that only she can score, which was outstanding. Then, her second try was a team try. That was on the back of about 13 phases of pretty physical carries into some skill, into some more physicality around that pick and drive. And then the last try for Kate, which was great to have her back in the mix. It was a really well-worked set-piece move. So that's exciting. And I think we're the only team this year, the only team other than France this year to score 3 tries against England. So we'll take that and be pretty happy with it. At the same time, that last 10 minutes hurts a little bit and took the shine away.
And Sione, what was it about those last 10 minutes or so? Like you said, it was a close game to that point. The wheels fell off the bus, obviously. And what happened was fatigue. Was it just mental fatigue as well, not just in the body?
Yeah, I think, and I think this might have come up in one of our previous conversations. So we're working to build our physicality. The reality is, not to make excuses, but to paint the picture, we had 2 weeks to prepare to play the best team in the world. They're full-time professionals and had a 6-week lead in camp. So we were always going to get to that point where the physical was going to be a challenge. And as you saw there, we got to that back end, and there were a few defensive decisions. There was some, attack turnovers that weren't consistent with the previous 70 minutes. They have the luxury of bringing on their bench, who out of that, I think there were 5 starters from the previous game against New Zealand. So clearly have world-class athletes coming on. And the reality is we unfortunately gave them opportunities that they were good enough to take. So we're pretty. So I was going to say we were just pretty confident in where we're at in our process, and now our challenge obviously is to chase that 80 minutes, which similar to Pac 4, it took us the tournament to build that physical capacity to go 80 minutes against a high quality team. Hopefully we're a few steps in front of that. We're aiming for that this weekend against France.
And you mentioned New Zealand. England's win over New Zealand. Of course, England's riding a high coming into the match against the Eagles, so their confidence is extremely high as well. I know none of the players really lack the confidence, but that definitely helps coming into a match against you guys. So when discipline's an issue, resulting in 5-meter mauls off of lineouts that England had a few of, that's got to be disappointing. That's got to be hard for the team and yourself, the coaching staff, to handle when you play so well and then you have the breakdowns or concede penalties in your own half. Is discipline something that you work a lot on, and do the players recognize that as, okay, what are we doing? What we got to do better with that?
Yeah, it was interesting. We gave them access, and they had a few mauls, but to be fair, we defended the mauls. We didn't concede off that. We conceded in general play. So, discipline is always at the forefront, and statistically speaking, our discipline has been pretty positive. But unfortunately, any opportunity for those top tier nations provides them with access, and access is the challenge there. As soon as they get in the 22, obviously the percentage of converting that into points is pretty high. I think they operated about 66% against us on the weekend, and they had a number of opportunities to do so. What we were pleased at, though, from a mauling perspective, is we were able to stop there. It's that their next 4 to 5 phases that they are very good at transferring into momentum that we were unable to stop at times.
And I'm sure you're a stats guy as far as coaching goes. I'm sure you have the coaching meeting after, look at stats. But I mean, you look at some of the stats, it was an even match, or if not better, for your side. I mean, you had to make England tackle. They made 50 more tackles than USA had. Unfortunately, the Eagles missed a few tackles, but turnovers won about the same. USA won more rucks, so the play at the ruck was much better. Great having Kate and everyone else involved there. Ball possession a little bit higher than England. It just off on clean breaks and defenders beaten, which was an issue later in the match, obviously, and then penalties in your own half didn't help at all. But so when you look at stats like those after the match, is that something that you look at and say, okay, good. Those are good numbers, but now how can we make those into scoring opportunities or wins?
Yeah, I think you're probably sitting in on my post-match review, to be honest, because we talked about exactly that. But some of those key numbers, that we worked hard on our attack breakdown to generate quicker ball and allow us to play that slightly more expansive style that they're chasing. In terms of our ability to hold possession and to build phases, that was excellent. But the key stats where England was able to get an advantage was territory. So playing in the right areas of the field, and obviously they converted their A-zone attack. So they had more opportunities in our 22, and they were able to convert them. So, we're definitely trending in the right direction. But the challenge is for us is to spend less time in our half, and obviously more opportunities, because so we had 5 entries into their 22, and we scored 3 tries. So we showed if we can get there, we have the ability to score points. It's just a challenge now. And obviously, as you mentioned, their discipline pushing us back into our own half is a bit frustrating because we know we can score points. We just need to spend, it's a bit of a cliche, I realize, as I'm saying it. We just need to play the game at the right end of the field. And, the more opportunities we can get, then the more opportunities we have to score points.
Let's talk about your players in this match and also this tournament. You mentioned Alev Kelcha, so your sevens contingent played very well in the wings, and Alev, obviously beautiful in the centers. Her up and under try was just, a thing of beauty. Hard to ask much more from them. Alev comes right in and does great the centers, and also having Kate back and her leadership. How important is it to having those quality players like Alev and Kate in that mix?
Oh, it's massive. Like, we took a really young squad to Japan, and we learned a lot about our playing group. And part of that was around how we deal with pressure through our leadership. Obviously, Tess and Mac did a great job stepping into that space, and K-Trades. But having not only Kate back, but having Hope back, having Rachel back, from a playing perspective adds a lot of impact, but also from a leadership perspective, how we were able to manage through, like we were down 28-7 there at halftime, yet turned the corner, came back and scored points and got ourselves back into the contest at 21-33. Adding Alev, adding Cheddar, adding Chris in, they're all experienced players that have been capped prior. So having that on the field has been huge for us because that obviously not only it provides strike in the wider channels and what Lev shows down the middle of the field, but it also shows a lot of experience. So they weren't overawed when things turned and the momentum shifted against us. And then now, obviously, our challenge against France is to convert that experience, that strike, into more scoring opportunities.
Now, you have no new caps to present on this traveling squad during the WXV. Can you talk about the reason for that? Maybe not the tournament to break in new players. I mean, there are obviously Hope Rogers, a few others are up there in caps. Any particular reason why no new caps this tournament?
Yeah, but simply it's a performance tournament. Like, we came here to perform, to win games. We had the opportunity in Japan to introduce more players into our squad, and to be honest, there might not be new caps, but Emerson Allen earned her second cap. Sophie Pers earned her third. So we're building the depth at that end, but we're also up against the best teams in the world. So we need our best players who are performing really well. And obviously bringing Hope back in was massive. It changes the landscape of our set piece, but also of that third phase. Rachel Johnson coming around the corner. There are very few players in world rugby that have the physical impact of Rachel on that second phase. And then Kate just is a smart football player. I really enjoy working with her because she can play 6, 7, 8 at a pinch. You probably won't see this in my coaching time, but at a pinch, if she wants to, she could probably play 13. Having that back on the field is so important. In terms of where we're at the moment, we're leaning on that experience and the players that have showed that they can perform under pressure. And obviously in our wider squad, we still have those less experienced players learning from them. Olivia Leatherman, for example, has been capped, I think, 4 or 5 times, gets the opportunity to sit down with Hope and learn from her and build her understanding of the game, but also gets a chance to challenge her and see her firsthand. So that's the scaffolding at the moment.
Could you imagine if Kate started playing when she was, 12 instead of 22, where she would be right now? She's already a hell of a player, but I believe she didn't even start playing until her senior year in college, or possibly. The way she took the game on, and now she's the leader. I mean, I don't even know. The sky would have been a limit for her. I mean, she's already a great player. I don't know if I have a question there for you, Sione. I was just thinking.
Okay. I think you could probably say that for a few players, to be honest, Bill. Like, you've got Kate.
Of course.
Rachel Johnson, who started later. What's exciting coming through is that we've got some young players that have started playing at 12 and 13. So I don't think we spoke about it before, but young Soraya Ibarra made her debut in Japan, and she's 18 years of age. Wow. She's in the sevens program, and obviously we'll be with them through World Series. But that's the exciting thing moving forward. Like, I heard part of what Scott was saying around the pathway. we're going to try and work really hard to connect that pathway and be more aligned in terms of what the senior Eagles are doing to, the Falcons, and then the 20s, 20s and 18s. And that landscape is the exciting part, because there's a lot of talent there. We've just got to make sure that we nurture it up so that when they are 23, 24, we're seeing them pushing for selection versus 25, 26, 27, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, I don't know, you could be tired of hearing about this, but we keep hearing chatter on social media, whatever, about Alana Marr wanting to take a crack at making the team for Rugby World Cup, possibly. Mm-hmm. Has your staff had any conversations about that would look like, the possibility of that? Obviously, she would need to earn the spot, but have you talked about that, and also what it would mean maybe to have someone with that kind of visibility for the game on the women's team? Obviously, that wouldn't be the main reason to be on the team, but what would be the possibility of Alana making the team?
Oh, I think before we get to her making the team, the fact that she's had this much of an impact for rugby, full stop, and then USA would be secondary. What her, Emily, and the Sevens program were able to do in Paris was outstanding. I was, obviously coming from Australia and watching that bronze medal game, cheering the Eagles home, and when Spiff, made that break in the middle, was just as excited as every other US person was. So that's a massive positive. But I've had a couple of conversations with Alona, and she's been upfront about wanting to earn the jersey. It's a culture that we're building within this program that, obviously if you want to play 15s, you've got to play 15s. So that's part of it. But it's been great to see that alignment of the 7s and the 15s. And, it's not just the ones that you've seen that have spoken to me. There's a few others that would like that opportunity as well. So hopefully we can align that in the lead up to the World Cup, because effectively what we are quite clear about as a staff and as a program, we want to take the best 32 women to the World Cup to compete for the USA. And clearly we've got some markers along the way. So Pac 4 will be a big one that we want players to be available for to then earn that selection. And then the stars align a little bit next year, and then the Sevens World Series will conclude, and that allows us to obviously have access to those players as well. And Emily's been great at part of those conversations, but also working with us around our depth chart and how we can align those bits. So someone like Alona, you look at her physicality, you look at her skill set, and it fits both games. It's just a matter of what number she might wear.
And she's not completely new to 15s. She's played before, so that wouldn't be too much of a difficult swing for her.
No, and that's been a great thing about the US women, to be honest, mate, is most of the players that have been in the Sevens program have played 15s. And then some of the players that are in my program, like Hope in particular, I keep going back to but Hope obviously have been captains for the US and Sevens as well. So it's nice. And that you've seen that with Lev, Cheddar, and Chris being able to transition pretty seamlessly after what is a limited preparation into that England game.
All right, let's jump forward. This weekend, you have France on Saturday, who lost to Canada this last weekend. Talk about your preps for France. What do they do well that you are preparing for? Yeah,
so their halves are great. They have one of the best 9s in world rugby, and their 10 is a very creative player who can run, pass, and kick. We watched that game live in the stadium, and Canada did a fantastic job. So acknowledging the northern neighbours, they were able to out physical them, and obviously their set piece put France under a bit of pressure. So we're preparing for a very dynamic French team who have strike players across the field, and they kick really well. So on the flip side to that provides opportunities as well. Like kicking to our backfield, and Bulo, Chris, Cheddar, Nana, when she gets the opportunity, is an exciting thing for us. We get a chance to counterattack on it, and we're really happy with how our set piece is progressing, and that's an area that we are pretty keen to put them under some pressure over. Today I just got back from. Sorry, it's getting a bit dark here, but I got back from an opposed session against Canada, where we went full noise in our units, and then we played 40 minutes of gameplay against them. So really taking advantage of that physical preparation, but also asking some questions, obviously, at what they focused on and whether that aligns in terms of the pitches that we've seen.
And considering how physical that match against England was, is there anyone on your squad who is not available this Saturday due to injuries from that match?
No, at the moment everyone's available. Obviously a bit banged up. It was physical, but at the same time, like we're expecting that. It's tier 1 rugby, so you know, if you get to week 3 and you're feeling fresh, you probably haven't been involved very much. So no, it's at this point in time everyone's available. Obviously we've got one more session to get through, but you know, if everything trends the way it should, then we'll have our strongest team out there on Saturday.
You have Ireland the following week. They just beat the Black Ferns for the second time ever. What does that win from Ireland say about how no result is a given in the WXV1?
Oh, it says obviously exactly that no result is a given if you perform well, and that's the beauty of rugby, right? Like ball's in contest, and if you're good enough to win it, you get to play. If you're not, then obviously you spend a fair bit of time defending. It also says a bit around, you know, Ireland's now in their second year of professionalism. They've got time, they've invested obviously money into their women's game, and you can see the result of that. It's exciting for us because we know if we get more time, and we'll have more time leading into the World Cup, we get an opportunity to prepare in a similar vein. We'll look at a 6-week preparation versus a 2-week prep. And that closes the gap. And what Ireland has shown, that if your set piece is strong, you're physical on the ball, and you can play with a little bit of endeavour, then, you know, special things happen. And I thought how they closed out that game against New Zealand was pretty impressive, considering, you know, the gap in terms of the world rankings and obviously that talent pool that New Zealand's pulling from. I thought, you know, full credit to Ireland for having the character to stay in it and then close it out at the end.
So post WXV, what's next for you and the team? When does the team meet up again next?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a break, to be honest. Post WXV, the PWR players, of which we have a fair number, will all go back to the UK and transition into their season, which starts next week, I think. So they'll transition into that. The domestic-based players that aren't involved in the UK competition will go on to an off-season program. So, you know, we get a chance to actually build some physical capacity in the off-season before we launch our 2025 campaign for World Cup. We will, at this stage, assemble in January for a talent ID camp. That'll be just the domestic-based players. And then we have a couple of, when I say a couple, we have a test match against Japan planned before we head into Pac 4. So if everything goes to plan, which it looks like it's going to be confirmed, then we should have 2, potentially 3 domestic test matches in the US next year. So that's exciting. It's
have one on the East Coast if you don't mind.
We're trying, to be honest. We'd like to spread the love around.
Yeah, it's a big country, as you're finding out. I asked Scott Lawrence about this earlier for his players and not in his traveling pool and the PNC or the November tests, and also for those players who are not in the squad at all. I asked them how they were staying physically fit or rugby fit, rugby active. They got the American Rugby Premiership for the men's on the East Coast at least, so many players are doing that. And you mentioned a lot of your players will be over in Europe playing the PWR. The others, though, and including the others who are maybe coming up who could crack the squad soon, how are they playing? Are there leagues right now? Are they active in this fall playing? I know you said something about the the training schedules, everything else for them. So how are they staying rugby fit?
Yeah, so the vast majority are in their off-season program. So we'll obviously at the moment we're in a little bit of a pause with WXV being the main focus. But once we transition out, they'll all be on remote programming. There's a few players involved that'll be playing up in the northwest. Their competition rolls in with Canada being active, but the vast majority will be on those off-season programs. The intent then is to, as I said, build a fair bit of physical capacity. So from a rugby standpoint, it will be quite limited, but what that means is that we get a fair bit of time to build our physical capacity, which, being that we're not full-time professionals, is an area that we don't always get a chance to focus on. So we're pretty excited about building through that through to January. And then obviously the discussions around WER and that transition into February, March are still ongoing, but hopefully that becomes a reality, and those environments become that high performance environment that we're able to then share players with that competition.
So lastly, Sione, when we first spoke soon after you took the role, you didn't really have a grasp yet about the immense size of the country. Well, you did, but I mean more about the rugby landscape and everything from college to high school to club level. Do you have a better idea now, or is it more confusing?
No, I definitely have a better idea.
Okay.
And it's a huge landscape, but it's also exciting because the opportunities to connect and align some of those, a lot of those parts, to be honest, and actually drive a pathway. And when I say actually, it's not meaning to be disrespectful of what's being done, but really drive an aligned pathway through not just World Cup, but what comes next, because obviously World Cup is our core focus. But the reality is that post-World Cup, there'll be a transition of the playing group. We have a mature playing group, experienced one, which is exciting in some ways, but it also means that, we've got to work pretty hard on that next generation that's coming through. That'll take us through 26, 27 into 29. So it's daunting at the size, but also it's exciting because of the size, because the reality is there's a lot of talent out there. It's just trying to find opportunities to get access to it, but then also develop that so that they get an opportunity to push for a jersey one day. So daunting on one hand, but also exciting at the potential. And you probably, and I may have said this in our first meeting, but the potential of where this program can go is what gets me up every day, to be honest. And you've seen parts of it with the Eagles. The 20s obviously had a really good win against England earlier this year, so you can see it's there. It's just getting it consistent and making sure that we're able to connect it, and hopefully both the 15s and the 7s programs are pushing in that top echelon versus we're sitting about, I think we're 8th at the moment, so we'd like to be a little bit higher, and we feel we've got the talent to do that.
Well, I'm sure I speak for many, many others. We're excited about it too. We love seeing the growth. We love seeing this. We love seeing what you're doing with the team. But Sione, good luck this weekend against France. Good luck the rest of the WXV. And again, we'll touch base again early next year.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Cheers,
Thank you, Sione. Have a great night.
You too. See ya.
Bye-bye. All right, thank everybody for tuning in. If you missed it earlier in the show, the first half, we had USA Men's head coach Scott Lawrence join us to talk about the PNC and about the upcoming autumn matches against, I believe it's Spain, Tonga, Portugal, I believe it is, all overseas. So if you all want to rent a charter plane, let's go see those matches. I don't have any money, so if you guys can chip in a few bucks for me, I love it. And then at the end there was Sione Fukofuka, the head coach of the USA Women's program, who's in his first year still as a head coach, and things are looking good for that program as well. So check it out. This show will be released as a podcast on Thursday. Every Thursday, these shows are released as a podcast. And if you don't mind, please give us a like, follow, and subscribe either here on the live channel, YouTube, or Facebook, and especially on our podcast replays, and share them with your friends or enemies. It doesn't matter. As long as they like rugby or want to get into rugby, we do appreciate it. We really enjoy these shows. Also, stay tuned. A little program, next Wednesday, we have our eyes set on a new sevens coach who very likely will be on the show. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. I had a blast talking to Scott and Sione, and I had a blast of you guys listening to as well. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. We'll talk again later.